Inequality in 2013 was about the same as in 1950. Let that sink in for a moment. But Sweden became rich, employed and equal before the introduction of big government. Sweden became rich, employed and equal before the introduction of big government. Sweden became rich, employed and equal before the introduction of big government. The nation developed a vision of Sweden functioning as a family, an inclusive and equal society, and it was extended to refugees. In 1987, 3% of the population were non-EU migrants. In 2013, this was already at 12%. And something curious was happening when these migrants moved to Sweden. One study shows that a group of immigrants who fled Saddam Hussein's Iraq in the 1980s and 90s were 2.3 times as likely to have a higher education as a native Swede. But once in Sweden, only 18% of them were employed. They're highly educated and from the upper class, so why aren't they working?
Because that's what communism teaches you. They teach you why work. The government will just support you.
In 2004, when the Swedish economy was performing strongly, one study showed the average income of Iranian immigrants was 65% that of a native Swede, whereas similar Iranian immigrants in the United States earned 136% compared to native-born residents. Clearly, migrants in the 80s and 90s were not integrating that well. Sweden's strategy for managing new arrivals was to distribute them throughout the country. The goal was to relieve pressure on the big cities, but what they often overlooked were the local economic conditions. On top of that, about 2/3 of jobs in Sweden are filled through informal means, which is challenging if you do not speak the language and you don't have a social network. All the while, the welfare state was providing for the basic needs and requirements of these migrants. Then in the 2000s, the type of migration changed. More migrants arrived for humanitarian reasons, with a peak in 2015 when Sweden took in 163,000 refugees in only 1 year. Most of them
Keep in mind, Sweden is tiny, man. It's like one state. Not even that, probably. It's like a little island, isn't it? I bet you it's not bigger than just a regular state or whatever. Multiply these numbers by 50, because we got 50 states here.
Were from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and were fleeing from conflicts at home. This led in 2011 to a staggering 20% of the Swedish population being of non-native descent. 20% of the Swedish population being of non-native descent. 20% of the Swedish population being of non-native descent. Many ended up in...
This is the same in every... That's actually a low number, okay? That's a low number. Every first world country in the European Union right now is 20% or more illegal aliens.
In poor suburbs. They integrated poorly, they didn't feel as part of society, and many lived in poverty. They depended on government welfare.
Yeah, they make a dual society because they need us to fight. See, they're bringing back segregation. We're going to self-segregate ourselves because we don't speak the same languages anymore. So we're going to self-segregate, and then we're going to have division, and then they'll have a lot more control over us.
This was not only a burden on the state, but as it turns out, it was a breeding ground for criminal activity. The recent outbreaks of violence are between gangs that are ruled by second-generation immigrants. They recruit young teenagers from these poor neighborhoods. They were primarily involved in drug trade, but in recent years, they have infiltrated the government and even political parties.
See, and I think in Sweden, I might be wrong, but I think they made it legal for anyone that's like a minor. If you're a minor, because they're socialist, they're communist, you know what I mean? So they, you gotta, kids are just little kids. They know they're smart enough at 5 to get sex changes over there, and chop their tits off if they're little girls. But apparently they're not smart enough to, when it comes to murdering someone or bombing someone. Nothing happens to them. They get literally like probation. You can literally be 16 years old walk in and start shooting 10 people and you get probation. Because they're children, they don't know any better.
Where they make money from fraud and other illicit activities. It is difficult to know exactly, but one study estimates that criminal organizations make around $500 million per year from this type of illicit activity. Over half of Swedish inmates serving long prison sentences are first-generation immigrants, and 45% of Sweden's unemployed are born outside Europe. This community has become a heavy burden on society. For most of the 2010s, the nationalist Sweden Democrats were a lone voice against immigration. They used to be a fringe party, but partly because of the migrant crisis, they have now become one of Sweden's largest political groups. The current Prime Minister of Sweden is breaking away from tradition. He supports tax cuts, free market policies, and economic liberalism, and he's working closely together with the Sweden Democrats. His right-wing coalition believes that the rise in gang violence is directly connected to Sweden's earlier immigration policies. His foreign minister said, "We can now see that outsideship and lack of integration in combination with trade of narcotics and organized crime is creating this very, very toxic mixture."
We can now see. They knew it was a plan. They're planning this. They want a new monetary system, and they're going to get it. They can only do it with World War III or by bankrupting the entire world.
It would be short-sighted to blame this violence only on migration. Government policies aimed at integrating migrants are partly to blame, and the situation escalated in a system that went perhaps too far in accepting new arrivals. But what makes it challenging is that this issue speaks directly to a core belief of Swedish identity.
Immigration is closely linked to the country's post-war economic boom.
So there's a historic understanding or sense that given some time, and this will be something positive for Sweden.
You make sure that they get jobs, to get somewhere to live, and they get a place in Swedish society. Otherwise, you just you create a problem.
The idea of fully returning to a capitalist society is not widely supported, but that reforms are desired can be seen in Sweden's current government policy. They are implementing racist policy.
They're calling it racist, huh? Why is it racist to vet people and not let them... just because you don't want someone in your country from other countries, I think that we shouldn't let anyone in. My own personal opinion. I don't give a crap what color skin you have or religion. I don't think anyone should be let in. Why should I have to gamble on people from another country? Why should my children have to gamble, especially when you don't vet anyone? But even if you did vet them, why do I have to care about these people? Fix our country, and then you can show all the other countries how to do it. That's how you fix the world. You don't just, have this attitude that give someone a fish. No. You give them a fishing pole. You people all want to give people fish. We can't give people fish for the rest of our eternity, okay? You got to start. One country has to figure it out, and then you have a fishing pole that you can give people. That's how you help the world, by fixing your own country. And I'm not just saying the United States. If you're in Russia, I don't care if you're in Iran. Fix your country and show the rest of the world how to do it. Then you're giving away a fishing pole instead of a fish. Don't go over and pay your neighbor's electric bill when you can't pay your own electric bill. We can't even handle taking care of our own citizens. You don't just then go out and start to get more citizens. I can't house these citizens or feed these citizens, or they're homeless. But I'm going to go get some more citizens so that I can make them homeless. Yeah, how does that help out those third world people by coming here and being homeless?
Could this be the end of their famous middle ground?
Of course it's the end. What are they, insane? They embrace socialism, which is communism.
Returning.
Brilliant. In the past few years, Sweden has been rocked by a grim wave of gang violence. Its firearm homicide rate is now the highest in Europe, and grenade attacks in Swedish suburbs have hit the international headlines. Unsurprisingly, this has become a big talking point in Swedish politics.
Keep in mind, Sweden's they're known for the safest country in the world until they opened up their borders.
By just looking at the stats. Essentially, while Sweden has relatively low rates of petty crime, in the past few years or so, the country has seen a significant spike in both sexual crimes and violent crimes, especially firearm homicides. Since 2013, Sweden's firearm homicide rate has essentially tripled. This means that Sweden saw more firearm homicides than the rest of Scandinavia combined, with the highest per capita rate in Europe. Similarly, while it's come down a bit in the past few years, the fraction of Swedes self-reporting exposure to a sexual offence is more than twice as high as it was in the 2000s. The increase has been particularly acute with women, with the number of women self-reporting exposure to a sexual offence quadrupling since 2000. Things don't look like they've really improved this year either. In the first 10 months of 2023, there were 48 fatal shootings and 139 explosions from weapons like dynamite and hand grenades.
Keep in mind, this country's like the size of a small state.
More than in any previous year. This continuing spike in violent crime seems to be mostly driven by feuds involving a drug gang called Foxtrot, which came to prominence after European police cracked an encrypted network called EncroChat in 2020. This allowed Swedish police to essentially bring down a whole load of established drug gangs in Sweden, but this just created an opening in the market that was promptly filled by Foxtrot, who've turned out to be probably more violent than their predecessors. This spike has made crime the #1 issue in Swedish politics. Polling suggests that Swedes feel less safe than ever before, and are therefore more concerned about crime in society than ever before. Crime was the biggest issue for voters at the 2022 election, with a 41% plurality of Swedes saying it was their #1 issue. And in October of this year, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson gave a rare speech to the nation outlining how his government planned to reduce the violence through increased police resources, longer sentences for convicted criminals, and new surveillance powers.
This is how you know that they're lying pieces of garbage. This guy doesn't want to stop anything. If he wanted to stop it, he closed down the border. It's that simple. If your president or your prime minister is not shutting down the border, then he's just joking around and pretending that he's trying to help.
Powers. Unsurprisingly, all this has sparked a debate between the Swedish left and right about both the causes and solutions to Sweden's crime crisis. In general, the left blames the gutting and privatisation of the Swedish welfare state, which used to be one of the most generous in the world. For most of the 20th century, Sweden was a model of social democracy. The left-wing Social Democrats were in power continuously from 1932 until 1976, except for a brief period in 1936 when Axel Persson Bramstorp from the Farmers League was Prime Minister. During that time, they created the Folkhemmet, or People's Home, a cradle-to-grave welfare state that was one of the most progressive in the world. Like many centre-left parties, the Social Democrats' electoral dominance really started waning in the 90s, as neoliberal ideas became increasingly mainstream and Social Democrats struggled with the economic turbulence of the 80s. Much of the Swedish welfare state was duly cut or privatised, and government spending fell from 70% of GDP down to less than 50%. Sweden's regional inequality has gotten significantly worse. Swedish authorities have designated 22 extremely vulnerable areas prone to crime and violence, which often have high unemployment, low wages, and poor public services. The right, on the other hand, focus on immigration. For the last few decades, Sweden has pursued a remarkably open immigration policy and developed a reputation as a humanitarian superpower. Net migration into the country really started accelerating in the 2000s and hit a peak during the mid-2010s. Today, roughly 20% of Sweden's population, or around 2 million people, were born abroad, nearly a further 5% have 2 foreign-born parents, and about 3%, roughly 250,000 people, are refugees. As of 2020, Sweden has the 9th most refugees per capita globally. Wright point out that the majority of violent crimes are committed by immigrants. Of those prosecuted for gun crimes since 2017, 85% were born abroad or had at least one parent who was.
85% of gun crime. That's almost pretty much all gun crime in Sweden is by the illegal aliens.